Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review. I'm Chierstin Susel here with Johnny Venerable. Johnny, I almost forgot how much of the offseason is about addressing rumors, speculation, and also trying to predict the future. So we have a lot of that in our show today. And I want to start with us trying to predict the future when it comes to Vance Joseph and whether or not he's going to remain with the Cardinals as defensive coordinator or get his second opportunity as an NFL head coach with the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's hot and cold right now, touch and go. We did our show yesterday, and I think that was the first time, at least for me, where it really felt like a possibility he could leave. Because I think most people assume that maybe he'd get an interview or two, but he's not in the upper echelon of candidates. And yet his lone interview with Miami looks like he is going to be potentially brought back for a second interview. And as of today, yesterday we reported that he was amongst the favorites to be hired in Miami, amongst the favorites via DraftKings in that running. And then after our show last night, he jumped up way higher via the DraftKings Sportsbook app as the overwhelming favorite. Now, at the recording of this show, right now, Vance Joseph, DraftKings Sportsbook app, he is still the favorite at plus 250, which means you lay 100 down, you win $150. However, $250. However, Brian Daboll, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, is on his heels at plus 350 now. That tells me a couple different things. The Buffalo Bills clearly feel like he is going to get a job. They're basically making proclamations as to who their next OC is going to be. I still think Daboll ends up with the New York Giants. They've got a personnel guy coming over from Buffalo that's now their general manager. However, they're interested supposedly in Brian Flores as well. We've got a couple GMs that have been named today, both in Minnesota and Chicago. So I think now we'll start to see a trickle-down effect of most of the GM options being filled. But long story short, it's going to come down, I believe, to one of these two individuals. I don't think Mike McDaniel plus 600 is an option for them. And I also feel like if it's Miami's preference, I feel like they want to go with Daboll. But I also feel like if Daboll leaves them at the altar, they're the only team to interview Vance. That's because they love Vance internally. The owner does. The general manager does. We talked about that on yesterday's show. So all this to say, Chierstin, still very much in play, probably 50-50 right now. But if you were to ask me like 48 hours ago, I would say no. I mean, he'll likely be back, or they could part ways with him. My guess is they are waiting for this shoe to fall before making any changes from a coaching standpoint.
I wonder, by the way, did you catch I was laughing at your Minnesota accent that you ignited when you said Minnesota.
It's like when I say mustache. I can't say mustache regular. I say mustache. We all have our cross to bear, Chierstin. That's mine.
And we love you for it, Johnny.
Thank you.
My thought is, I don't know the protocols for this. I wonder if the Cardinals are like, if you have to wait until the Dolphins make a move before you start looking at potential replacements, would you even go down that path? Like, for instance, are the Cardinals talking to Vic Fangio right now? Like, hey, we're not sure what's happening with VJ, but in the event that we've got this opening, would you like to come in for an interview? Like, are those discussions being had, or they don't touch it unless a move is made and it's official and he's leaving?
I think it'd be foolish not to hedge your bet and get ahead of some of those talks as a contingency standpoint. But if I'm Vic Fangio, I would say to Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, I'm a better defensive coordinator than Vance Joseph is today, right now. So regardless of whether or not Vance leaves or goes, if you guys want an upgrade, I'm that guy. Now, it's a really dicey situation for the Cardinals because a couple different things work against them. Number one, they've got presumably a lame duck coach in Cliff Kingsbury coming into next year. He is not going to be re-signed this offseason, we don't think, and he's not going to be fired at this point either. So any defensive coordinator that you court to come to Arizona would have to be okay with that. They'd have to sign off on that and know that in good faith, they'd still probably be around if they did their job, maybe for the next head coach. I would also say this, I think the Cardinals want to make changes to some of their defensive coaches, and they can't do that yet until things shake out with Vance. And they could just say, okay, Vance, yeah, you got the job in Miami, take all the defensive coaches with you, right? Or take 2/3, take, Billy Davis, have him be your defensive coordinator in Miami, something like that. We're going to start fresh here and make a change. But again, I saw Tennessee today, the number 1 seed in the AFC, play well, not great, but played hard until the finish, lost, on a last-second field goal to Cincinnati, fired a bunch of defensive coaches today. They set a standard like, this isn't good enough. We're not making wholesale changes, but we're moving off some people that underachieve from us from a coaching standpoint. Cardinals haven't done that yet. I know fans want them to. I'm telling everybody, be patient because you might get a 3rd-round compensation pick this year out of it.
Yeah, I voiced my opinion on it yesterday. I think it would be a best case scenario for everybody involved. Vance would get to move on, get his second chance. And I think that just a sort of new face, new tone, new mindset, new regime in terms of, a defensive coordinator and company would do a lot of good for just providing a little bit of a spark, because I just don't want to enter into next season with just a couple new players or something like that. Like, something needs to be shaken up with this team, and that is something that would really excite me, especially if you get a guy in like Vic Fangio. I was seeing some names that were tossed around. Brenton Buckner was one that I was reading about, and the Cardinals' current defensive line coach. This is his second stint with Arizona. He was BA's guy when BA was here, and left for a couple of years, and then came back. Beloved, respected by all, doesn't have coordinator experience, but certainly is a defensive-minded guy who I would be interested. I don't think that it would be like a home just because he doesn't have any proven skills in that position, but it would be interesting if they were to elevate anybody that's on the current staff. I would say that would be the guy. I saw Wade Phillips being tossed around, and I don't know. Good.
He's been out of football for a little while. I'd be a little bit nervous of that. That's a move, I think, if you were going to.
He's got like 8 years of football experience. It's okay.
Listen, I think the Cardinals need a quick fix, so I'm not opposed to anything. But to me, the biggest factor is, can you come in and make the most of the Cardinals' talent? Like, I'm not wrapped up in scheme. Like, I'm not wrapped up in 3-4 versus 4-3. I want somebody to come and look at these assets the Cardinals have. I mean, like, I want to talk draft with people. We're going to cover it. We're going to cover the Senior Bowl and the Combine. It makes me physically ill, Chierstin, to think about taking a high defensive player and giving them to Vance Joseph and then them not playing next year. And for people who are saying I'm crazy, well, he played Marco Wilson. He took the last 2 first-round picks for the Cardinals. They didn't play. We spend months dissecting this draft information and breaking down potential prospects. To think that the Cardinals are good enough not to play their first-round pick, regardless of the position on defense. I mean, outside of safety, and they're not going to take a safety in the first round. They're set at safety. There is not a singular position defensively they could draft at 23 overall that doesn't need to, at the bare minimum, be playing at least half of the snaps next year, if not 75% of the snaps. And I love Vance. That is my biggest criticism, because he took a jump this year. They were better in next to every statistical category off of last year. I think he's very capable and he's a good coordinator. But you can't, that's just malpractice on how to build a team.
All right, Ryan Anderson asking, who are your top realistic options if Vance were to leave? Vic Fangio we don't know his legitimate interest in the job. So we're only saying, I would say him just because he's available. That, and that would be like a top pick. The other 2 guys that I threw out there, Buckner and Wade Phillips, who I think would be, I still think would be interesting. I don't know. Maybe he's to the point.
I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it.
I mean, he's proven, right? He knows what the heck he's doing.
He knows how to use linebackers. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when I was covering the Broncos earlier in my career, he was in Denver, and I loved the guy. He's just a great just a great, like, I think he's just really, really well respected.
Yeah.
And he's a winner. And so, like, I wouldn't even mind a guy like that. Like, I think there's a lot of options out there. I just continue to go back to Fangio because I feel like he would be, like, probably top of that list.
It just comes down to Keim's relationships with people. We talked about it on yesterday's show. Cliff doesn't have a relationship with these people. So it's Steve and Michael Bidwell. It will be like the same approach they took to JJ Watt, courting a defensive coordinator to come here, courting them with their checkbook. You'd have to make Vic Fangio the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. And I think you could sweeten the pot by saying, hey, Vic, we're going to give you a 5-year contract and we're going to see that through. And we know you just went through some turmoil, but we can keep you out here in Mountain Time, right? You can go from Denver to Arizona. And if we have to pivot off Cliff at some point, you're going to be in the front of the line to take this job. And at the very least, we're going to keep you on staff for the next head coach. Who knows if Cliff gets fired midseason next year, you could be the interim. All this stuff could be built into his contract. To me, Chierstin, I just worry about, I have no doubt the Cardinals would want Vic Fangio. To your point, would he want to come here? Would somebody like, I know a lot of people are ranting and raving about Don Martindale, who was let go by the Baltimore Ravens, who were higher in every statistical category than the Cardinals this year. And he got fired because of difference in philosophy. That'd be another good get. Would he want to come here? I think here's a great compliment that I can give to Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph came here when the defense was at its lowest point, and he built it up to a 10, 11th ranked unit. Now we're looking for somebody to push it into the top 10 consistently and make the most of all these assets. So kudos to Vance. The baton taking, go be a head coach. Let's get the next guy in to take it to the next level. We want this hiring to happen for so many reasons, meaning Joseph to Miami, because again, it gives the Cardinals clout as an organization that they promote from within, and people get jobs as a result of their success. And I also think Vance, contrary of what we might believe, I think has a really good relationship with Cliff. By and large,
yep.
I mean,
I think he has a great relationship with Cliff.
Yeah. So he works well with others. Cliff would be welcoming to a lot of. Cliff would tell Vic Fangio or Wink, Don Martindale, come on in. You're running the show. You're not the head coach, but you're one step below. You have some say on personnel. Clearly, you play what you want to play. We didn't tell Vance Joseph who to play and who not to play. So, I just don't want fans. Number one, we have to get to the point where they move off of Vance, and then number two is, okay, if and when that happens, we need to be realistic about some of the options that they have. If they end up getting an interview with Vic Fangio, I would be shocked to let him leave the building. Very similar to how they did it with Cliff, but he has to take the interview first.
Yeah, you just brought up an interesting point. And Brandon, I see your super chat. Thoughts on the rumors of coaches not getting bonuses? That is our next segment. So let's wrap up this topic, and then we'll move into our next segment. We'll pull up that super chat. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you,
Brandon,
sir.
We will get to your question. Thought. What was I saying? Oh, for a defensive coordinator wanting to come to Arizona, the dynamic of working with Cliff is he leans so much and trust in the staff around him. Like, listen, I'm the offensive guy. Like, you're the defensive coordinator. Whatever you want to do. Like, I'm giving you full reins. I trust you. I lean on you. Like, you take care of that side of the ball. And I don't think that every situation necessarily is going to be like that. Yeah. So, So, I mean, I think that if you're a defensive coordinator, we've mentioned it, Arizona has its perks in and of itself. You're a team that you could still say is sort of on the up and up and is teetering on being a great team. Underperformed this year, but the talent is definitely there. And they invest in their defensive players. And so for me, it is a very appealing job to take, especially if you're a guy like Fangio, who is either going to have to sit out a year or take a coordinator position, right? Like at this point. Right. So it's like,
he's not getting, I think that's it for it. I don't think he's ever getting a head job again because of his age. the factors at play, I think he would have needed to pull a Bruce Arians, because everybody said he was the greatest coordinator of all time, never get a shot. Well, he's got a shot, and he saddled himself with an organization, didn't have good quarterback play, and he paid for it. Another name I would throw out there, and we talked about it yesterday, is I would talk to Mike Zimmer and see if he still has interest, number one, in coaching, number two, relocating his family to the West Coast. His son was on that Minnesota Vikings staff, so if he's allowed to bring his son and let him coach on staff, again, Mike Zimmer in that role was tremendous before he became the Vikings head coach. And then those early years defensively, they were fantastic in Minnesota. And then personnel kind of got watered down. But Mike Zimmer would be another one that I'd be interested in bringing on.
A lot of you you're Minnesota. I just like, what are you doing?
That's how I say it. He was the defensive coordinator for Cincinnati in the heyday of all those really good Andy Dalton teams before he got the Vikings job in the city that will not be named.
Lots of people in the chat starting to ask about this bonuses rumor.
Let's do it. So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. But first, 4 teams remain in the NFL playoffs, and that means only 4 teams left for you to bet on over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56-1 odds on any team. Bet $5. You're going to get 280 in free bets if your team wins. If you're not a new customer, you can experience the conference championships with same game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game, get a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, it is secure, and it is reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So again, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use that promo code PHNX, get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. So basically you bet $5, you win 280 in free bets if your team wins. Again, that's promo code PHNX. But as always, with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, it is 21 and over, Arizona only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. All right, so it all started with a tweet. And I believe we have that tweet. And excuse me, I do not know how to. Oh, this isn't the tweet.
That's from our buddy Matt.
That's from yesterday's show. All right. So basically, the tweet said that Michael Bidwell was holding out on giving the staff, the team, their playoff bonuses. My initial reaction, and there has since been a report that's come out that has basically shut it all down. But my initial reaction was like, it hasn't even really been like that long. So like, if they haven't gotten a bonus, if there was any truth to it, Jason La Canfora, if I'm saying that right, Arizona Cardinals ownership definitely not pleased with how the season ended, hearing coaches yet to receive their playoff bonuses. So that was the tweet. My initial reaction is like, I don't know how quickly you're supposed to get a playoff bonus, but it really hasn't been that long. And then Pro Football Talk on NBC Sports came out with an article basically shutting the entire thing down, had a source call it, quote, complete BS, and that they are absolutely getting their checks. What are your thoughts that this is even a thing right now, John?
I do think there's some credibility to it. La Canfora has been known to take big swings and a lot of misses. He gets dragged on Twitter a lot. He's an East Coast guy, used to be with NFL Network, has insiders in the NFL. He's got over 500,000 followers. I mean, he's been in this game a long time. So I'm not going to completely discredit him. Now, Pro Football Talk quickly came to the Cardinals' defense and said, no, people are getting paid. It's fine. I mean, again, is this a scenario in which checks were supposed to be handed out and just haven't yet? I think there could be a little bit of an issue. Maybe like you get your bonus with your walking papers here pretty soon. Certain coaches may not have their bonus yet because they're going to maybe get fired after this Vance Joseph thing goes down. I think there could be some smoke to that. What I will say is typically Michael Bidwell takes care of coaches and players. He pays star players, unlike any owner that we've had in this franchise history. I don't consider him petty. He pays people accordingly. I don't think that this is to me, it fits kind of the track record of a little bit what's going on, though, with this team over the last week and a half. There was the news about that Kyle Odegaard stated that I believe that they had a heated exchange or a meeting of some kind. And everybody has kind of dissected that and ran with it, bits and pieces, how they will. But now this comes off the piggyback of that. Cardinals probably just want to be out of the press. Like, no. Talk about the NFC title game of our counterparts in the NFC West. Don't talk about how we're not paying people right now. The best pub again for this team would be if Vance Joseph got a higher head job so they could tout him up. Look, we're doing good things here. We got this guy promoted to a head coach, but I think there is some credibility to it. But if it does not look good for them, regardless if it's true, because not all press is good press. If they're trying to court a new coordinator or players or coaches to come here, they don't want to go back on the idea that they're a cheap franchise. They used to be thought of that way back when they were in St. Louis in the early 1990s, Arizona Cardinals. So I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. Probably didn't happen the way Lock and Forrest said it, but I think something obviously took place to spur this.
Once again, Brandon, thank you for the super chat, bringing up this topic. Thoughts on the rumor of coaches not getting bonuses. So we are addressing that now. Another thing that was said in the Pro Football Talk article was that basically they were going on the notion that like Bidwell was doing something like a violation of a contract by them not getting paid yet. And so you could say like, it just had like, they're getting the checks out. It's still happening. But maybe it's still like he didn't violate anything, but maybe it still is a little bit late, or whatever. But and then brought up the point that Bidwell is also a trained lawyer. He has a law background, but so I don't think that it would be anything like absolutely blatant like that. I just can't see that happening. What happens though when you're in a situation where it's just like, there's a lot of emotions flying. There's a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming. You've got, a rumor here about a conversation that was had. Now you've got somebody else in your camp telling somebody else that didn't happen. Then, I think it was Bidwell that went on the radio that said, oh, we've had lots of discussions. And then it was like, okay, now which is it? So just little things like that, like compound. And so when you have like a negative, if there's no truth to it, there's no truth to it. But when you have like negative stories like this come out, it just starts to make you wonder like, well, I mean, all this other stuff's going on internally. Like, I wonder if there is some truth to that. It's not a place that you want to be as an organization.
No, like we never hear this about like a lot of the blue blood franchises in the NFL. Like you don't hear about the Packers dealing with this kind of thing, or the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like button up organizations keep things in house. And you do not, if you're Michael Bidwell or Steve Keim, want links in your front office of people going and running to the media because they sense vulnerability. But Chierstin, I mean, I saw that report this morning, and like I know it may or may not be true, but like you made a great point. We were in SoFi Stadium. That did not feel like a playoff game. I think very few fans this year, after how this team finished, are celebrating a playoff berth. So I'm sure if I'm Michael Bidwell, it's just like, well, like, yeah, we made the playoffs. We were also 10-2, and we literally fell on our faces over the last 6 weeks of the season. I'm not saying that's a reason to, renege on bonuses, especially if it's built into people's contract, but like, how can you not have a bad taste in your mouth if you were Michael Bidwell? All these investments that you made, and I get guys were hurt at the end of the year, but so many of the losses were inexcusable. The effort that was lacking. I've got an article up on gophnx.com right now just talking about the lack of that dog mentality for the Cardinals. And they just were so soft at the end of the year. If I'm Michael Bidwell, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to pay out these bonuses. And we're the laughing stock in the NFL right now. We just got embarrassed. Our two counterparts in the NFC title game. We've got an equally competent roster. So it's not right if he did it, but I mean, I can understand his frustration for sure.
Shout out to the amazing work that you do and the amazing articles that you write
up
at gophnx.com. If you are not a member, you probably haven't read them yet because they're member only content. And it's a pretty good deal if you do become a member. You get access to the articles, our Discord, you get a free t-shirt, you get deals on everything that we've got going on up at phnxlocker.com. And you just become an even bigger part of the family. So if you do want to read that article or anything else that Johnny or any of our other writers on staff put up there, become a member at gophnx.com. Yeah, I'm mostly embarrassed that this is even that we even have to address. Like, I'm embarrassed to be a part of the fan
We had
base.
to address it. Yeah.
Well, I'm embarrassed that it's just like, oh my God, this isn't I'm embarrassed for the Cardinals that these conversations are even happening. So I think it's interesting.
It's not me putting it out there on Twitter with 6,000 followers. I'm like, Lock and Four can blow air sometimes, but he has a voice in the NFL community. He was very matter of fact. Like, they have not paid out bonuses yet. They're pissed off. They're withholding money from people. That's a horrible, horrible look if you're Michael Bidwell. Awful. They need some good press in the worst effing way. And I know how they could get it. We talked about it yesterday. Just roll out just that new uniform, that new color scheme we talked about. Come on, Michael. There's your life preserver.
Do something to change the narrative. Like, even if you got to leak something, do something, because it's hard for the fan base to every other day have to see something that's trending and have to question, is this real? Is it not? That's awful if it is real, or, oh my gosh, how's that going to change the landscape of things if it's real? Again, we're in the off season. There's speculation, there's rumors, and there's a lot of predicting the future. And that's what we do here in the off season. A few of you basically saying, listen, the coach. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at this comment. That's great. So the meeting that they had where Michael Bidwell was supposedly really pissed off, he had the checks ready to go and withheld them purposely. That's great. Wouldn't that be hilarious? Like, hey guys, I have your bonus checks here. We just got our ass kicked on national TV. I'm just going to hang on to these and let them sit with me for the next couple of days. So postpone your trip to Cancun and buying that new exterior of your house and adding your hot tub. We're going to wait on that because we went 1-5 down the stretch.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. If it's a contractual thing where you say you will get paid by this date or whatever, then obviously don't mess with that. But you stuck it up towards the end of the season, I wouldn't dangle it, but I might just be like, I am in no hurry to get this hand moving anytime soon.
You're on the edge of Michael Bidwell's desk, but you have to go into his office and meet him eye to eye. You're Bill Davis. Hey, Bill. Oh, I saw you started Tanner Vallejo in the wild card game. Here's your bonus right here. Why don't you come? We have a conversation. Oh, you've been fired. This is actually your pink slip.
Well, I would be like, you know what? I think I can wait. That deck doesn't need to happen next week. So I think
my kids can stay in public school. We don't need another semester in private school. We're fine.
Yeah, if only that was the kind of money that was making the difference with them.
Yes.
We live different lives, Johnny.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so people are saying that they got their money. It's worth talking as we said. Nobody necessarily said that it was true. It's just worth talking about because it's interesting that right now negativity, and whether it's rumor or a half-truth or a leaked fact or whatever the case is, just seem to be following the Cardinals right now. And we just would like something positive to come up so we don't have to talk about it, So that's why. Checkered Life, people like to pile on the negativity when the Cardinals are down. I don't believe most of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. With these things, you don't know. I'm pretty, I typically don't like to run. I live by the rule of not running by one person's thought on things. If there's multiple people saying, yeah, we're all hearing the same thing, then I'll be like, okay, there's definitely truth to it. Sometimes you just never know like what sources' motives are, or if it's like a secondhand thing or a third, fourth, fifth hand thing, how far down the pole is, like the like the telephone game, by the time it gets to you, like something definitely is not right
It's all
there.
muddled.
Yeah. Cardinals update. I wonder who is leaking this and why they would and what they would gain from it. Low key think it might be Kime because he's feeling the pressure from Bidwell. I don't think it was anything like that. We're still talking about the paycheck thing, right? Like, yeah. So like, this is all personal opinion. I've got like nothing founded on this. I would say this information did not come from a guy like Kime or Cliff. Like, this came from somebody that is an analyst something, or that works in the facility that heard somebody say something. Like, I think this is very secondhand. I have no idea. That is just the way that I, in my mind, kind of digest it.
This is an interesting comment, excuse me, from Jordan, saying that what's interesting is that Chuck Pagano had heard this happen. Jordan, are you confirming that Pagano had heard about the meeting or the checks? But I'd seen something too, Jordan, about Chuck Pagano hearing that things weren't going well in Arizona. And he was on Pat McAfee's show kind of giving insight, and he defended Cliff and said he thinks Cliff's doing a great job. So I don't know if he's trying to coax himself into another defensive coordinator role, but he does have about Jordan says, excuse me, about the checks. So that's interesting. So I do not doubt this came from the Cardinals, somebody within the Cardinals that was disgruntled. Just like, again, the Kyle Odegaard situation. The guy worked for the company or the franchise for almost 10 years. You don't think he still talks to people there? And then the Cardinals went running to Ian Rappaport and said, no, defuse this. Everything's fine. We're fine. They don't want ex-employees coming to air their dirty laundry on Twitter. So everybody that banged on Kyle for that was ridiculous. And then Rappaport went on Pat McAfee's show and basically confirmed like he has contacts with Michael Bidwell, because McAfee's like, is your source the owner? And they like laughed about it. But of course, that's who in some way he's talking to. So most of the time there is some smoke to some of these. It doesn't, to Chierstin's point, it's muddled maybe, but there's something there. So again, that's why it's worth discussing.
I agree. All right. We can, if you guys have more questions about it or comments about it in the chat, we can certainly continue the conversation. But let's take a break for a message from the Arizona Department of Health first. Children 5 and older are eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. The vaccine is the best tool that we have to reduce the chances of getting sick with the virus. The vaccine can reduce the risk of being hospitalized. The vaccine can also reduce the risk of dying from the disease. It is safe, it is free, and it is highly effective. COVID-19 vaccines are available throughout the state of Arizona as well, and you can visit azhealth.gov/findvaccine for a location near you to help make sure that we're all healthy, that we all stay out of the hospital. Again, it is free, it is safe, it's highly effective, and there are locations to receive the vaccine all throughout the state of Arizona. Just visit azhealth.gov/findvaccine. All right. I think it's probably a good time to move on. And I know that you wanted to get into some draft talk. And
I did.
Got a little graphic for you so that we can reference. Here we are, Johnny. You assembled all the 2022 Arizona Cardinals draft picks, and it's not as exciting as I would have hoped, but
it's not complete. The cupboard's not bare, right? It's not an LA Rams draft board is
big difference.
Gutted from top to bottom. Let's look at that graphic if we could, Chierstin, one more time, because there's been a lot of questions about like where the Cardinals are picking as it pertains to each round. So I can definitively say, like, other than the comp picks, because those are projections, the other picks are solidified. So they've got those 3 first picks. those are the meat and potatoes, right? Those should be, in a perfect world, 3 starters, 3 top 100 picks, pick 23, 55, 87, where the question arose from a lot of the fans, or what kind of compensation are we going to get from, let's say, a Hassan Reddick leaving, a Patrick Peterson leaving? Well, fortunately for AJ Green, but unfortunately for the Cardinals, he had some incentives kick in based on his performance this year. So if de facto, AJ Green's signing canceled out Patrick Peterson's signing. Also, Hassan Reddick, and the year that he had last year, didn't get the big contract. His signing was canceled out with Matt Prater signing, who got annually about $3.3 million, but over multiple years. You got to remember, Peterson and Reddick were signed to 1-year deals. So while their guaranteed money for 1 year was more, they're not under contract this spring. So basically, the Cardinals, what you're seeing there, are going to get a 6th-round comp pick. This is a projection, but I feel pretty good about it, for Kenyon Drake going to Las Vegas Raiders. So thank God for John Gruden. So that helps there. Then they get a 7th-round comp pick for Dan Arnold leaving, and then Angelo Blackson going to Houston. They get another 7th. So that was supposed to be Chierstin before the incentives hit. They were going to get an additional 5th for Patrick Peterson. That's not happening now because AJ Green hit his incentive. So long story short, and to Jordan's point in the chat, we need this Vance Joseph compensation pick in a lot of ways, because if you don't know already, you can trade that comp pick now. You weren't able to do that in years prior. And I also just think that, like, the Cardinals are going to go all in again. They're going to try to retool because they're under pressure and they have a lame duck coach GM combo. Those 7th-round picks, and to a lesser extent that 6th-round pick, those are maybe meaningless on a roster that's going all in. That's going to be comprised, I would imagine, of a lot of veterans again. Though 6th and 7th, and to a lesser extent, 5th-round picks are great when you're retooling and rebuilding. So I would expect the Cardinals to probably package some of those, maybe for players in the offseason, but no 4th-round pick because of the Marco Wilson trade up last year. No 5th-rounder because of the takeout and Zach Ertz trade. Both trades I would do again. Those were great contributors, but
I agree.
There's a lot of meat missing to begin day 3 of the draft that I'm sure they'd love to supplement.
I wish they had a more exciting pick, but then again, the draft is, can be a toss-up anyway. But
they had it the last 2 years. Yeah.
I know. And the last 2 years have been really exciting come when, like approaching the draft and come draft day. Listen, you could pick higher in the draft, though, and not have your players play. So I guess there you go with your toss-up. But I just feel like, I mean, hey, and maybe you go elsewhere. Maybe you trade up. Maybe you, look into free agency, whatever. There's a lot of options for the Cardinals, but I want to see like a big name, whether that's a big talent in the draft or a free agent offseason pickup, something.
Well, a lot of fans bang on Keim, rightfully so. His draft record speaks for itself. It's not great, right? But where he does excel is when he trades picks for players. He's batting almost 1,000. He got Zach Ertz mid-season. He was fantastic. I would assume they bring him back. Rodney Hudson for a 3rd last year. So I think that is some Cardinal fans can take solace of knowing that they probably aren't going to use those 7th-round picks, or at least all of them. What I will say is that what the Cardinals desperately need is to fill out the middle of their roster with, they have high-end players, but then there's a big drop-off. And those good to great players are few and far between. They need more Jalen Thompson-esque players on the roster. Guys that aren't on the Pro Bowl level, but are very good, that are going to get 2nd and 3rd contracts. And typically you get those guys. You can get them in the 1st round, but that happens on day 2 with the 2nd and 3rd round picks. So if that's Keim's best day, he found Tyrann Mathieu in the 3rd round. He found David Johnson and John Brown. I'm still high on Rondell Moore next year. So the more swings that you can get, that's why I wouldn't be opposed to the Cardinals trading down from pick 23. The better off this team's going to have to retool quickly from the meat of the roster, because this is it. This offseason, we'll talk about it ad nauseum. Assuming Kyler Murray plays well next year, they're not going to sign him this offseason. It's going to happen next year. that money dries up quickly. Go ask the Packers now how they're dealing with being, $40+ million over the salary cap because they have a $40+ million quarterback. Ask the Dallas Cowboys, who have no money right now, and they've got a B to a B+ quarterback in Dak Prescott. The Cardinals need to make good on Kyler Murray's rookie deal, and they've got really one more season to do it before they have to pay him.
We have a ton of comments in the chat, and they're ranging in topics. So I'm just going to go down the list.
Sure.
And we'll start with Checkered Life, who says, I think big changes will happen if Vance gets the head coaching job in Miami. Hopefully we hear something soon, with a question mark. Johnny, if you were a betting man, and you happen to be a betting man.
I do. I lose a lot of money,
Would you bet on us hearing something by the end of the week?
I think so. I think we could hear, maybe not of the working week, but maybe Saturday, Sunday. Watch out for Brian Daboll going to the Giants, hopefully in the next 48 hours. That's the shoe that we need to fall. Because if it doesn't, then if they go a different direction, that's trouble. Because I still think Miami would prefer Daboll, and Vance Joseph, by all accounts, is their fallback option. But Daboll, New York, that just makes more sense. He's from the East Coast right now, being with the Buffalo Bills, doesn't have to relocate his family down south. That's what we need to have happen. Then hopefully a tweet that says Vance Joseph is having a second interview if all goes well, so on and so forth. Let's check back in Saturday, Sunday, I would say.
Hopefully multiple tweets from multiple sources that say he's getting a second interview, so we can feel good about that, right?
So we can start counting our comp picks, and we can talk all the defensive coordinators you guys want.
Lance is asking, do you think that Bidwell/Keim will bring in an OC and let Kingsbury focus on being a head coach? Well, they didn't bring him in for that. They brought him in to also be the offensive coordinator. So I like, where do you go from there? Why would Cliff Kingsbury be your head coach then?
It's a great point. It's the point that I've been trying to echo, is like, Cliff calls the plays. That's why you brought him here, because he called the plays at Texas Tech and they were putting up 500 yards and 50+ points. Like, if he's not calling plays, what is he doing? He's not an elite leader of men. We've seen that, given their fall on their faces down the stretch, right? He doesn't have that John Harbaugh-esque, perseverance, or Mike Tomlin, where you're not a coordinator, you don't have a specialty, but guys just follow you, that you resonate with them. I would say, I think that, like, the best case scenario, and I was advocating for this last year, was, they interviewed him once upon a time. I know the Bears are interviewing him right now for their head job. Could you get like a Jim Caldwell to come in and be like offensive, assistant head coach, offensive, I don't even know what to call it, not offensive coordinator, but, special assistant to the head coach. Give him a title where basically he's number 2 on offense, and he can be that stabilizing unit, because he is so well respected. He had multiple winning seasons in Detroit. I think he's been grossly undervalued in NFL inner circles. That's the kind of presence, calming presence, somebody like that I also think would resonate with Kyler as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they could, sure, they did elevate Sean Kugler, or at least add to his role last year for this season as run game coordinator. I know that that's not, the kind of like number 2 that you're talking about, but they did give him a little bit of assistance with Sean Kugler. If they could bring in another guy, sure, but I don't know if you're, and at this point, it's like, if you offend the guy, you offend the guy. But I don't know that you want to say, hey, you're hired for this job. This is, we believe in you. We want you to succeed with your own approach, but then also bring somebody in. But like, also, we're going to bring this guy in to kind of just like make sure that you stay in your lane. Like, I don't know.
Here, Jalen makes up a good point. Kingsbury isn't against having an OC. When he first got hired, he tried to get Mike McDaniels, who's the OC for the Niners now, as his run game coordinator. And I agree with you, Jalen. Like, you could bring in anybody you want, but Cliff is calling plays. And if Cliff isn't calling plays and the team succeeds next year and somebody else is calling plays, well, like, what's the value of Cliff Kingsbury? That's my only question.
Yeah, but also run game coordinator, which he has now, like I just mentioned, is different than an offensive coordinator.
Right, somebody who's calling plays. Cliff is calling plays in the Kyler's headset on game day and has called every game outside of the COVID games since Kyler Murray was a rookie in 2019.
You want to get to this Alberto comment?
Yeah, if we were to fire Cliff next year, what kind of impact Sean Payton would have on the Arizona Cardinals if it were to happen? Well, funny if you should ask that, Alberto. We talked about it yesterday. Not to say we at PHNX Cardinals were ahead of the curve, but we did put out a tweet yesterday. Would you trade the 23rd pick for Sean Payton? And I gave my opinion to Chierstin yesterday, but I was also pretty taken back that everybody was still caught up in Bountygate. And now you guys seize the bell of the ball on Twitter for Dallas Cowboy fans, amongst other fan bases. I don't think he ends up anywhere but Dallas, assuming they blow it up next year and McCarthy underachieves. I don't know if the Cardinals have enough cachet to get Sean Payton outside of trading for him. And right now it sounds like he's taking a year off, which means that after he takes a year off, he will get to pick. And it's like once upon a time, what happened with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was, according to Adam Schefter, 99% likely to take this job and then didn't and went to the Hunt family in Kansas City and took that job. The Cardinals needed to be able to trade for Sean Payton if he were to come here.
Yeah, Sean Payton is in a really good spot, and he did make the point. He said, my plans are to not be coaching in 2022. That's just how I feel. Yep. He doesn't need to, nothing is in jeopardy if he decides he wants to step away for a year, an opportunity to become a head coach again. When he wants to coach again, will be there. So everything is on his time. I agreed with you yesterday. I would love to get a guy like Sean Payton in here.
Of course.
Just a proven guy and a respected guy. I would love that so much.
11 top 10 offenses in his career. I think it's only been out of the top 10 one time. And I had people talking to me about 2009 Bountygate. Guys, we're trying to win a Super Bowl and get Kyler Murray right. And this is the guy who made Drew Brees. Here's what Mike says. Doubt Peyton wants that head trip drama Dallas brings. Not if Jerry gives him a blank check and partial personnel. Like Jerry Jones would give Sean Payton whatever he wants. Michael Bidwell, also, who's the Cardinal GM next year? Would he have a relationship? Because if you're firing Cliff, you're probably firing Keim. It would have to be now. It would have to be this offseason. It's not happening.
You bring up a good point because a lot of people in the chat saying New Orleans has his rights for another 3 years. He's still under contract until 2024. So, who would be the perfect person to get him out of that situation? It would be Jerry Jones, who's like, I'm going to do anything. Yeah. So you make a good point there.
You don't think the league would want that too?
I'm sure. Yeah, America's
league
team.
Yeah. Sean Payton in Arizona.
No, they want Sean Payton to be the head coach in all of their primetime games. So
yep, that's right. And he was on staff in the early 2000s before he took the Saints job. He's got a relationship with that organization. The Cardinals would have. I'm not saying the Cardinals would not be attractive for other candidates. I don't want to say that, but I just don't think they'd be attractive to Sean.
Let's wrap it up with NFL AZ Cardinals. Quote, clean house after next season. If we don't even make the playoffs, Keim, Cliff, Murray, all under 1 year left in their contract.
There's zero chance outside of a Deshaun Watson scenario that Kyler Murray is not the quarterback for this team for the next 2 years.
Deshaun Watson?
Well, it'd have to be something like that for the Cardinals to move off of
I thought you were like some scenario that would allow him to come here.
No, I'm sorry. Poor choice of words. Cardinals are going to ride with Kyler Murray at least for 2 more years outside of an off-the-field issue like a Deshaun Watson that would come up that they would say, no, goodbye. Keim and Kingsbury are lame duck GM head coach combo. They're not going to let Keim hire another fourth head coach. That's insane. But I think they're going to be good enough next year to make another run at the wild card. So I feel like we could have this same conversation next year and things could be extra dicey. There are 7 playoff spots and the Cardinals can play well before November. How many wins can they get? And the team presumably could be better on paper. So I think if I had to guess right now, like they're going to run it back after next year. I feel like they're going to be just good enough. And then Michael Bidwell is going to look at dollars and cents and say, well, I've got a couple double-digit win seasons. Like, this is good enough for us right now.
If they can run it back with their stars, so a lot of them, we've got free agent. Like, if we could keep an Ertz, if we could keep James Conner, and then healthy stars. So JJ stays healthy, Hopkins stays healthy. If they can run it back with healthy stars of this season, the Cardinals should be in a much better situation. You just never know what's going to happen.
We got to get Russell Wilson out of the division. So San Francisco is not a factor, Seattle's not a factor. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals have shown they can beat both the teams in the NFC Championship game if the pieces align. Like nobody's going to say the Cardinals are a joke to start next year, like they were saying this year. People will just point to, well, yeah, just wait the Cardinals out until December, January, and we'll see what happens. And the Cardinals can change that. They need the right group of players to change that, and I think they can. But remains to be seen if they will. Yeah, hopefully Trey Lance does suck, and the Niners take a step back.
Great conversation. We appreciate everybody chiming in the chat. One of our favorite, it's quickly become my favorite part of our shows is just getting to look in the comments and chat with you guys. So we appreciate it so much. Johnny and I will be back tomorrow, and then Frank will be joining us Thursday and Friday. So we will see you then. Plenty more off-season Cardinals talk throughout the week. And hopefully by the end of the week, we will be talking about Vance Joseph is staying or Vance Joseph is leaving.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow.